You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The College Football National Championship game is set, and it will not feature the Texas Longhorns. Here we go. Welcome to the semifinal edition of the Locked On Longhorns Squad Show. Your team every day and your team every game. And for the Texas Longhorns, their final game tonight as the Horns go down to the Ohio State Buckeyes by the final of 28-14. Coming up, we're going to have full breakdown over the next hour of this game. My name is Jeff Biggs. That is the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. We're going to have live coverage from AT&T as well. We've got Chris Gordy there. Jonathan Davis, the great host of the Locked On Longhorns podcast, is supposed to join us at some point, and we may have some other surprises. But I want to let you know that FanDuel, from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. Visit FanDuel to get started. And coming up here, Coach, it was 14-14 at the start of the fourth quarter. Ohio State had the big drive on offense to take the lead. They had the big fourth down run for Will Howard. And then it was the Buckeyes defense that came up big, and they got the scoop and score to really put it away. And here we are, 28-14. The Longhorns played Washington a year ago, and we thought that this team was going to be better and had a chance to get over that hump, get to the championship game, and get another title in Austin. But it did not work out that way.
Well, and I go back to the start of the football game when Texas gets they lose the toss, Ohio State defers, so Texas gets the ball. They get you get a first down, then Ewers gets the ball batted at the line of scrimmage. It looked like he was kind of a little bit of a slow starter for the Texas offense, and then Ohio State goes right down and score, and you're thinking this is fixing to be one of those 28-10 games at the half. But the game settled down. I thought the Texas D got a couple of really good stops. I thought defensively Texas played really well in the first half. And you're going to say, well, what happened right there? What happened right before the half? And the screen, I mean, that's something that is a very tricky situation. And I'm going to tell you why. Because Texas was playing, they were backing out. They were trying to say, hey, keep everything in front of you. And when you have, big receivers, Smith, Ibuka, Tate, I mean, they got really good receivers at Ohio State. You're going to go to keep everything in front of you. Well, Chip Kelly makes a hell of a call, and he throws a screen, and they get three out to that side. They get the center guard and tackle to the right side. Well, I can tell you that when you get those big three out there, just think of yourself, and you're in behind – you've got the ball, okay, and you're in behind three big 18-wheeler trucks, and they're whipping it down the freeway. And you know what? You're a Ferrari. And all you're doing is going in and out of those trucks, and that's exactly what happened. I don't know that they really blocked anybody, the three big guys, but it was a great job by the Ohio State back to just kind of wiggle it in there and then score. So it's a 14-7 game at half, and it really didn't feel like it was anything but a really close game at that time. I think Will Howard had like 200 yards passing in the first half. You take that 75 yards off, you had 125 yards. And so Texas defensively was doing what they needed to do. I felt like to stay in the football game. And then offensively, it was like it got really frustrating to watch them because it's almost, to me, and I haven't graded a lot of Texas film this year, but it feels like Sark always kind of waits for the perfect call, and they got it. They got it twice because they were able to release Blue twice up the rail for touchdowns. Once when they had him one-on-one on the backer, And then another time when Ohio State brought 4 weeks and Texas got the football game tied up. So I thought it was a really, really good and well-played football game until Texas's last drive. I thought the two teams were very well matched. I thought you saw Pete Kwiatkowski do a great job of calling the defense for the Longhorns. And I thought you saw Chip Kelly do a hell of a job, with what he was doing with Ohio State. So it was a great game until, Texas got down there first and goal. And instead of just bowing up and sticking it in the end zone on second and goal, they call a toss to a trip side. And it's the easiest thing to do as a coach or as a fan or anybody's to sit back and question play calling. It's easy to do when you don't have the sheet and you don't have the time clock running. But that, to me, that was the biggest play in the football game, because then it caused Sark to feel like he needed to go for it on fourth down with, under 3 or right at 3.5 minutes to play in the football game. They go for it on fourth down. They blitz off the edge. He fumbles the football and they return it. And it's a 28-14 game, but in no way does that score indicate what kind of football game I think we saw?
All right. We'll get more into that, Coach, as the show goes on. I also want to mention, I forgot to mention this right at the outset, we want to hear from the comment crew. If you want to join in and participate with your comments and anything you want to share, we'll get into that as well. But right now, I want to bring on the everyday host of the outstanding Locked On Longhorns podcast. My first opportunity to get to have him on and get to work with him, the great Jonathan Davis.
What's
Jonathan,
up, Jeff?
What's up?
What's up, man? What's up, y'all?
I wish it was a little better circumstances.
I know, right? My first time hopping on live, but it's because the season's over. Like, geez.
You cover this team every single day, and you've been through everything, every moment, every game, every storyline, every angle. I know one thing that just stuck, and I was thinking about you during the game, and I'll let you have your thoughts, but I know, you were kind of like the middleman. A lot of people complained all season long about Quinn Ewers and the offense, and did they have enough, and they didn't play anybody. All all the hate that was out there, but and it just seemed like that the coach was saying, the defense did everything they could to kind of level that momentum and bring the game and give them a chance to win, and they just needed a little more from the offense. 14 points just was not going to do it, and that's what happened tonight.
Yeah, I feel like, and that's kind of been the story that we've seen from Sark in these big games, where it's like Pete Kwiatkowski's unit, rises above what, I wouldn't say what we're used to seeing. It's been a really good defense all year, but I feel like in these big games, Pete Kwiatkowski really brings it. The whole Jeremiah Smith to, what was it, 1 catch for 3 yards? That was just absolutely phenomenal. And it kind of felt like after the first drive, it was like, you saw that first drive from Texas, and then you saw that first drive from Ohio State, and it's like, okay, maybe Ohio State is just better. Like, maybe they're outmatched. And then next thing you know, the defense is continuously blowing up, right? Continuously getting Ohio State off the field. And you're right. Like, if Sark could just, get those plays going, right? Get Texas going offensively. Texas had the chance to take momentum, and then they finally get the momentum with the Jaden Blue touchdown right before halftime. Then the very next play from scrimmage, they get a 70-yard screen pass and score a touchdown. And so, you just needed a little bit more from the offense. But, I was listening to Coach, and, I agree with him. I think there's going to be a lot of takeaways, and we have a lot to talk about over the next hour. But, for me, if I'm on the 1 yard line, it's, I got my big guys in there. I'm trying to power up the middle, and if I can't get 1 yard, we don't deserve to win the Cotton Bowl. We don't deserve to win a national championship. The toss play going all the way out to the 7 or 8 yard line, thinking you're gonna get in that way and be cute. I just think Steve Sarkisian got too cute. I think that was my biggest takeaway, like Coach said. The fact that you just couldn't power that ball in there and get 1 yard to tie the game, and take your chances getting a stop on defense and getting the ball back to Quinn Ewers. That was the biggest takeaway. But like you said, I think this game was a lot closer, than the final score indicate. But yeah, you have to question, that second down play call on the goal line, and 2, why continuously in these big games, maybe not against Clemson and Arizona State, but in some of these bigger matchups against these really good defenses, these teams that have the same amount of talent as Texas, why can your offense only muster 14 points?
Yeah. That's a great point.
I think as I looked at it, and I didn't start watching it until late in the year, but it really felt like identity-wise, Texas likes running kind of the pin and pull, the outside zone, some of the stuff that feels like they're trying to get on the edge. And tonight, I thought, okay, they ran inside zone some. They had some success running some of that zone read stuff, some of that RPOs, and handed it inside to Wisner. And so I think the thing that's frustrating from a Texas fan standpoint is when you get in, whether it's in spring football, whether it's in two-a-days, I experienced it so many times in the NFL where we were going live in short yardage and goal line. And I can remember whether it was Jack Riley or Ernie Zampese, we're going to run that football right there. And you go ahead and stop us if you can. And so really it becomes a mentality of we're going to be as tough as you are. And the thing I think frustrated me was you hear Herb Street, and obviously he's biased to Ohio State. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, he talked about Texas getting called for a PI when the Ohio State runs a wheel route and grabs the Texas player and yanks him. And you're thinking, are you looking at the same game that we're looking at? Because they didn't call anything. It was hand fighting, and I thought it was all right. But he started talking about, well, you're not going to run the football in between the tackles on Ohio State. You know what? BS on that. I mean, it's just, it is. It's you versus them, and it's imposing your will. And that's really what it's all about. So I don't like – I think it's the easiest thing to do is to question play calling. But in that particular situation, at that time of the game where you'd gotten back-to-back PIs down there throwing the football in, first down on the RPO, and then they run the dig across the baseline and they run the dig across the baseline, then the RPO and get the back-to-back PIs to put the ball on the half-yard line. I mean, you should be able to impose your will there. And I really thought that was a story of a football game of two teams that were really going at it. And I mean two heavyweights that were throwing haymakers, and both teams were taking them.
Yeah, and right. I think it could be a little bit of a case of overthinking it, right? Maybe having too much information. If you look at it earlier in the year, I think Penn State and Ohio State, Penn State was in that exact situation, right? Where they're on the 1 yard line and they had 4 straight plays and couldn't get into the end zone. And so maybe Sark is looking at that. But I want to take it back a little bit further. If you remember the Oklahoma game last year where Oklahoma beat Texas, and Texas had 4 straight tries from the 1 and couldn't get into the end zone. And so maybe Sark is thinking, okay, I can't just, run it up the gut 4 straight times and get in. I have to be creative. I have to, outthink Jim Knowles and this Ohio State defense. And like you're saying, Coach, sometimes this is just about fundamental football from day one, right? Line up, push forward, and get 1 yard, right? But I think, like I said, Sark may have had too much information. Him being in this situation against Oklahoma last year, seeing Ohio State, stop teams in this situation earlier this year, and thought that he had to outsmart them, had to get cute. And, I think this is a completely different game. If they lined it up 4 straight times, it might not have taken 4 times, and just try to get 1 yard going up the middle. But, like you said, Coach, we'll be, questioning that play call for a long time. And if it worked, we wouldn't be saying anything about it right now. We'd be patting Sark on the back. So, well, that's
what makes what we do fun, right? It gives us a job because we'll have a lot of time to talk about it.
Yeah, but I didn't understand that one at all. I didn't understand that one at all. And, then at the end, a lot of people are going to talk about Quinn Ewers, because ultimately, that fumble that was returned for a touchdown is going to end up on his stat sheet. But man, if you're telling me all year that Cam Williams is a first round right tackle, I know he missed the game against Arizona State. I know that he's not 100%. And I know that Jack Sawyer is a hell of a player, right? But, that's a play where, Quinn Ewers, 4th down, once again, to save the season. He's trying to make a play in the end zone. He's not expecting his right tackle to not get a block at all, So, I mean, everybody's going to talk about Quinn Ewers. Yeah. Oh, he got hit and, scoop a score for a touchdown. They should have put Arch Manning in. Cam Williams has to be better in that moment. And we have to, do a good job of holding the right people accountable. Yes, Quinn Ewers is the one that fumbled the ball, and it led to the scoop and score. But Cam Williams has to get a better block on Jack Sawyer in that moment. I just want to say that because I know people are going nuts right now on Quinn Ewers, and his right tackle has to be better.
All right, let's real quick want to go back out to AT&T. Our own SEC guru, the great Chris Gordy, was at the game, and he is kind enough to join us now. We got 4 wide going on the Longhorns Squad show. Chris, give me your thoughts. How was it out there, and what were your thoughts on the game? I know you thought the Texans were going to win.
Yeah, I mean, look, the 4th down play, that one is the one that makes Jack Sawyer, legendary for, Ohio State lore. But I think for Texas fans, we're all going to look back at that 2nd down play. And I caught some of what you guys were saying. And, I mean, it's like, dude, you get down there, it's 1st and goal at the 2. You get the pass interference. So you got 1st and goal at the 1. You rush it for no gain on 1st down. That 2nd down. Was it a sweep, Coach? I mean, it was whatever it was to the left. I was down here watching. I mean, and Caleb Downs completely just blows it up. He reads it. He breaks through. I couldn't see whatever gap it was, a gap, whatever, comes right up. And then Trey Weiser's got no speed. Like, he's trying to get to the edge, but he's not running full force. He's kind of hesitant because he's like, should I cut it back? And by that time, Caleb Downs is just waylaying him, and it's a loss of 7. And I mean, behind the 8 ball there, 3rd down, 4th down passing attempts, that thing should have been, in hindsight, look, hindsight's always 20/20, but that 2nd down play should have been, and I had a few people down here say it, put Quinn at the goal line, put in Arch Manning if you want, and get him under center and just, QB dive 3 times, whatever you want to do there, but losing those yards there, that's where you lost the game right there, because it just made 3rd and 4th down so much more difficult on you. And again, still, you should make good pass plays on 3rd and 4th down, but that 2nd down play was just brutal, man, because they should have just been punching that thing in, and unfortunately, they weren't able to do it.
I mean, you guys tell me, but hadn't Texas this year put the tight end under center multiple times to sneak the football? They did it early in the game when they had when they put Manning in, and they kind of snapped it back to Manning, but they had the tight end up under the. I'm for anything except running toss to a trips receiver side. And again, I've been there. I've held the play sheet. I know how difficult it is. I know when you're under the clock and you're trying to call something. I get all that. But at the end of the day, you were a touchdown underdog to a team that you had a chance to tie up with 3.5 minutes to play in a football game from the half-yard line. It's time to impose your will. And I get what you guys are saying. They did. Penn State was not able to do it. I'm not talking about Penn State. I'm talking about the University of Texas, and I'd have been challenging. If I had to take a timeout in that situation to challenge my offensive line, I would have burnt the timeout. I would have said this is a time right here where we've got to get this football in, knowing I still got 2 timeouts and the 2-minute warning to fall back on. So it's easy to do, sit here and say that, but by the same token, it was such a magnified play in the game because how the next 2 snaps went.
Yeah, and they had just to add this in, they had already burned 1 timeout on that 4th down where Will Howard came back on the QB run and picked it up. Texas did take a timeout before that, so they only had 2 left, but still would have had multiple chances to stop the clock, Coach.
Yeah, I'd have faked an injury. I'd have put somebody down. I'd have done something to challenge my offensive line in that situation, because what you guys are saying is true. Penn State couldn't get it in. If what Herb Street was saying, I mean, he made them sound like the damn monsters of the Midway. Well, you know what? We'll challenge our offensive line and say, you know what? We're fixing to go assault their ass.
Right.
I'm fired up now.
And obviously it's going to be a little bit tougher on the goal line, but you talked about that, especially on those drives late where Texas was really starting to get a push. It was up the middle. It was, with the center, Jake Majors, with the left guard, Hayden Connor. They weren't just running to the outside. They were getting that push up the middle. And so obviously, a different look on the goal line, a different beast. But, like you said, we're in front of our podcast mics. We could question Sark all day. I just don't understand the toss there. To me, like you said, it's a mentality thing. You're telling your team that we can't line up and get 1 yard when you run that toss. and you ended up not getting it.
And to your point, I was, Jonathan, I was like pleasantly surprised when they finally started running through between the tackles. I was like, where was that the whole game? Because that was a big staple of how they were winning games down the stretch, and with both Blue and Wisner. And I mean, it wasn't too long ago, like, over the last month or so, when the Texas O-line was being talked about as like one of the best in the country, and how much they love to run block. And then to get down in that situation, it just surprised me that they didn't want to impose their will, and maybe Sark didn't let them do that. But that was really tough to see.
Yeah, and maybe just an overreaction to the first down. Go ahead, Gordy. My bad.
No, I was going to say you hit on it. Can't from the get-go. Cam at right tackle did not look 100%. I mean, I know he tried to give it a go for the game against Arizona State, didn't play, and I mean, look, it's one of those tough things. I remember Georgia in the SEC title game last year. They played Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey, who were not 100%, and it was evident they were not. And it just always sucks because you got a player who is a phenomenal player and busts his ass and gives his all, but he didn't have it tonight. And there were several times that pocket collapsed. Now, there were times where the pocket was there and Quinn didn't make the right throw. It felt like everything was high from Quinn tonight. Like everything, guys were having to jump up. And then even when guys didn't have to jump up, they were still jumping up because they felt like, oh, that ball's coming in so high. Again, he made some great throws on that last drive, man, to get down to the goal line too. And it's just unfortunate. But, yeah, we just watched Quinn Ewers walk off the field. And then somebody just asked me, they said, is that the last time we see Quinn Ewers, on a college football field? The reports were he's probably going to head to the NFL draft. But a dejected group of guys out here tonight. A lot of guys whose, careers, we'll see what happens with them. Jahdae Barron gave his all for the Longhorns. Michael Taff, Makuba. I mean, all these dudes just completely dejected after the game. The future looks bright. I mean, Arch Manning passed me a minute ago, and, the future's bright with Arch, but just a woulda, coulda, shoulda tonight,
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Gordy. I just want to expand on that a little bit more. When you talk about Cam Williams, I mean, like I said, this guy all year has been talked about as a first-round tackle. He's dealt with some injury issues. Didn't have great games this year against Georgia, which were the two losses that Texas had. But you have to rely on a guy in that moment, right? He's healthy enough to play. He's one of your best players. He's a future NFL player. You have to put him out there, and you, like you said, he just wasn't 100%. He couldn't stay in front of Jack Sawyer and those guys, and ultimately it cost Texas a chance on fourth down. But you got to, roll with who brought you to the dance, and, unfortunately in the biggest moment of the game, that's what cost Texas.
And guys, let's be honest, 15 games. It's a lot of games. That's a lot of football to play. In the SEC against really good teams, it's a lot of football. You got two more if you go to the NFL, and that's just to get to the playoffs. So it's part of the game. And you know what? Understanding how to play with a few nicks and a few dings, that's part of it. And I have an appreciation for him trying to play. I'm also saying, though, you know what? It's a tough game for tough people. And you know what? That's what separates the real players from guys who say they want to be real players.
Right.
Yeah, Gordy, I want to ask you, or I want to talk to you, because I was talking about, it seems like in these big games that Texas has been in the last 3 years, really going back to that first Alabama game where, they kind of almost shocked the world and lost to Alabama 20-19. It always feels like we see Pete Kwiatkowski's defense show up in a big way, but we've yet to see, with a team that can match Texas's talent level, Sark's offense just explode, right? And once again, here we are talking about a Sark's offense that only scored 14 points and took until the second, almost damn near halftime to get going. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Like, why does it feel like whenever Texas is in these moments, Steve Sarkisian, who they hired to blow the doors off of people offensively, is not able to do it?
Yeah, I mean, there was one game where it did all click, and that was 2 years ago in Tuscaloosa, or no, last year in Tuscaloosa, right?
Yeah.
Or no, 2 years ago, whenever the hell it was. Yeah, last year. I mean, that was the game that they really – sent the message they arrived. And that's how they got in the playoff last year, because when it came down to it, when Bama beat Georgia, they said, we can't put Bama in without Texas, because Texas had beat them head to head. But yeah, that was the one game, it feels like, that everything kind of, went well, and Sark called a hell of a game, and they executed 100%. And that was on the road in Tuscaloosa, one of the toughest environments. But you're right. Yeah, it does feel like some of these big games here, since Sark has been in Austin, that man, the defense shows up and shows out. Defense came ready to play today. It got to a point, I mean, I was in the press box talking with some folks in the first half, and there was a resounding, I know fodder on Twitter, but there was resounding national media members saying, ooh, do you give Arch Manning a drive here? Like, you just kind of wanted to say, like, just give him a look. Give that Ohio State defense a different look, just because of his mobility, right? You're not asking Arch to go out there and run the full arsenal of the offense and fling it around the field, because God forbid he throws a pick and he costs you the game, that everybody would be saying, what the hell were you doing? But just when it's been those moments this year where Quinn, that pocket's collapsing and he has no time, that maybe you give Arch a look. And they did against Georgia earlier in the year, right? Like, just give Arch a drive just to see what he can do and use those legs and athleticism. I mean, we did see him today in that 4th and 1, and God, that came really close to a fumble, but luckily his wrist or his elbow touched. But, I mean, it was a huge run, and all they needed was 1. He got 8. He fell forward for it. So it's going to be a really interesting component next year with the running ability of Arch Manning. But, yeah, man, a lot of people were asking for that because the offense just seems so stagnant in that first half. And then they finally got a drive, and then the defense lets them down right before half. I mean, Coach, that's 101. Like, the team's backed up, like, watch the screen pass with 30 seconds left. That's the only thing they can really do. Like, and they got it, and it ends up being a 14-7 halftime lead. And unfortunately, it felt like Texas was chasing. But there was that moment where it was 14-14, and then they got to stop, and they were getting the ball back close to midfield. You're like, this is it. And they couldn't do anything, and they end up punting. So I'm with you, Jonathan. As good of a play caller as Sark is, and he's done it everywhere, right? Alabama, he was awesome. Even in the NFL, he was pretty good. I mean, he's called plays everywhere. But you're right. Some of these big games at Texas, I don't know if he just gets in his head or what, but just seems like the offense can't do enough.
Well, you mentioned getting the ball back right there in a 14-14 game. I mean, that's a big throw when he overthrows. I think he overthrew Golden on the boundary on that where he's cutting and he runs the outcut right there. That's a big overthrow, and I think that's what causes people to do the pushback. If you're a first round, second round NFL considered quarterback, you're in perfect conditions. There's no wind, there was no wet ball, there was no nothing, and you had an opportunity to throw a 10-yard speed out. If you're an NFL quarterback, you hit that every time, every single time. The ball's not high. I don't give a damn that you couldn't get a full stride. I don't care that you felt a little something off of your right side. If that's what you are, and I haven't studied him enough to say that, I just hear it. Here's the guy on the Dr. Pepper commercial, and yeah, he's standing there with Bosworth, and yeah, everybody wants to say, well, this is the guy. Show me you're the guy. You had that chance, and I'm not coming down on Quinn Ewers at all. I'm simply saying that if you are what they say you are, then I need you to go show me that. And he had that opportunity in the biggest of games, in the biggest of stages, and he couldn't make that throw.
Yeah, I mean, in these moments, those plays are amplified. This isn't a game against Arkansas or Florida. This is the Cotton Bowl to get to the national championship. And, Matthew Golden, who wasn't healthy, it looked like he was going to sit out the rest of the game. He comes in, runs a beautiful route. He's wide open. It's 3rd and 5. You need to make that play to keep the drive going and potentially get up points, put pressure on Ohio State and take the lead. And, like you said, Coach, I mean, that's a 3rd and 5. You just have to hit. We don't want to sit here and just harp on Quinn Ewers too much and act like he was the reason they lost the game or the biggest reason, anything like that. But, to win a national championship, to be that team standing at the end, we have to expect you to be able to hit a 3rd and 5, right? If you're the leader of this team, Quinn Ewers, like you said, if you're going to be a 1st, 2nd round draft pick, whatever, one of the most talented quarterbacks of all time, one of the most talented recruits of all time, one of the most hype players, at the quarterback position, you got to be able to hit that 3rd and 5 and put your team in position to take the lead and put some pressure on Ohio State.
And let me give him a little credit. Hey, he does flip the ball out like you guys were talking earlier. I mean, he flips it out to Wisner right before he goes down. And, yeah, he made a couple of things happen. But I think the frustrating thing for Longhorn fans, and I don't want to speak for anybody, I'm just telling you as I look at it, there are certain throws in a football game that you have to bat 100% on when you're in perfect climate conditions. If I saw it, and you're going to say, well, it's unfair because you know what? I saw it with Troy Aikman. And people get on me all the time because, you know, I that's my point of reference. And Dak's not Troy Aikman. I get it. But at the end of the day, if you can't hit a speed out, I don't know that you can be the first round guy. And that's something to me that it really sticks with me is you've got to be able to stick that ball on him every single time.
Right. And Gordy talked about it, just not taking advantage of those opportunities. You know, I have to go back and actually look at the, you know, how each drive ended. But I believe the David Bender interception, I don't think Texas got points off of that. Right. There was multiple times where Texas, it felt like, got the ball at midfield and didn't get points off of that. Right. And so it was those opportunities where it felt like Texas could seize the momentum and where it felt like Texas was just hanging around in the first half. There were so many chances where Texas could have taken the game over and let Ohio State hang around. And then Chip Kelly put together that one great drive. And that was enough, right? That one great drive by Chip Kelly, the fourth down call, which was beautiful with Will Howard with the quarterback power. And then Texas comes down and tries to match it. And obviously, you know, end up giving up 7 more points to Ohio State. But Texas never seized the momentum when they had plenty of opportunities to. I mean, it felt like every drive was starting at the 40. Right. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it felt like they were in immaculate field position the entire second half. And, you know, it only led to 7 points.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I felt like Ohio State, almost all their drives kept starting at like inside the 15. Like it felt like, you know, Texas's defense was doing their job and, you know, they were backing them up. And Ohio State made some great plays tonight, too. But again, like that's where I say, like, credit this defense, man. The Texas defense came ready to play. They it seemed like that fourth quarter they were turning the heat up, and then that touchdown drive, and it's like, all right, every time Texas, it felt like they answered. It was 21-14. You go, all right, Texas, what are you going to do here? And you mentioned Golden playing out there. We were watching Golden during the game, like working with trainers over here. He was not right. You could clearly tell. And then the other guy who's battled injuries all year, Isaiah Bond, you know, we know he's been battling injuries all year, and he got out there and, you know, has a couple drop passes, and it was frustrating to see that. But yeah, man, it's super deflating to get down there in a 7-point game with 2 minutes to go, and you're right there knocking on the door, and you can't punch it in. All these coaches they won't be able to sleep tonight. They're going to be going back through their head over those plays and the play calls and what could have been.
Yeah, and it's a la Washington last year, you know, because the Washington game, you get down there, right, and you're throwing those fades to Adonai Mitchell, and you can't score to win the game, right? But, you know, just let me take a moment to be that Texas fan, you know, because we are talking about the Ohio State drive that put them up for good. Chip Kelly, beautiful drive. We all saw the hold on Colin Simmons, the true freshman phenom, Colin Simmons. He was held on that play where Will Howard backed out and was able to convert the big third down to Carnell Tate. So, you know, I know Texas fans are going crazy about that one on Twitter. Let me be that Texas fan and say Colin Simmons was held, and that allowed Ohio State to continue that drive and go up 21-14.
100% he was held. 100%. And guess who never said anything about it? Herbstreit didn't say anything, and they came back and showed it. They showed it coming out of the commercial. I mean, not only is he holding him, he's got him. I'm gonna say the word. He's got him dick collared over there for crying out loud. And again, you know, that's a terrible missed call. But I'm gonna say this, so guys, if I would have told you going into the football game that Ohio State's going to score 21, can you score 21 to beat them? I'm going to say yeah. I'm going to say yes. Texas's offense could score more than 21 to beat them, and that's exactly what your defense gave you. They played their I can't say it enough. Defensively, they played a lot better than I thought they could play, and they shut down, you know, what is a receiving core that everybody was hooting and hollering about, and, you know, Ibuka, Tate, Smith, they shut them down. And so I'm just saying you got to get more offensively out, or you're going to have to get something from the special teams, and you almost got that too. You almost got a return tonight. So it was a much closer football game than that score indicates. So, you know, I'm sure everybody that bet on Ohio State's yucking it up, but I got news for you. You're lucky as hell to cash that ticket.
Especially, and I want to say, especially after that second drive, right? Because Texas gets the ball first. They don't convert on the fourth down. Then Ohio State gets the ball and goes immediately down and scores a touchdown. Then Ohio State gets the ball the second drive, and they're just driving down the field. And I'm starting to think, okay, maybe Ohio State is just better than Texas, right? I'm like, maybe these boys just are better than Texas. And then they get saved by Travion Henderson losing his cool and punching, the defensive tackle in the face. They get the 15-yard penalty, and they end up not scoring. And then after that, they go, I think, like 3 or 4 consecutive drives without scoring until the screen pass at the end. So, I mean, from what I saw the first 2 drives where Ohio State was getting whatever they wanted, I mean, it looked like Tennessee and Oregon all over again. From what we saw after that from this Texas defense, just a phenomenal performance. And, yes, we needed more from Steve Sarkisian in the offense. Like you said, Coach, if you're going to come into this game and tell me I need Sark and Quinn Ewers to score 22 points, I'm taking that every time. And it's the same thing we saw against Georgia, right? 15 points against Georgia in the first game, 19 points in overtime against Georgia in the second game, and now 14 points. Your 3 biggest games of the year, you couldn't crack 20, all right? That's a Steve Sarkisian problem.
Yeah. All right, we have to take our first time out. Chris, but I don't want to leave you hanging. I don't want to make you hang around while we do this. Any final thoughts? Anything else you're thinking about as we look ahead?
I just walk with me real quick, guys. Just want to show you here. We're here on the field. This is the end zone. This is right where it happened. And let me just show you. This is how close Texas was. Right here. This line. They were 6 inches away and end up on the second down. They lose 7 right here, and they can't punch it in. This is where it was lost. And unfortunately, Texas Longhorns, a long off season. There's going to be a lot of optimism with Arch Manning and all the pieces and the great recruiting class. I'm sure they're going to start to dip into the portal and probably add some guys, and we'll see who they add. But nonetheless, just another season of Texas football taking that step. Year 1 in the SEC, big check mark. You proved you belong, but close but no cigar. Can they get over that hump? I'm sure we're all excited to see what Arch Manning's going to do the next year or so. And if he's the guy, we'll see. But appreciate you guys having me, and hook 'em, right?
Always.
You got it, Chris. Great job, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Drive safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Yeah. While Chris was talking, I actually got a notification on my phone. The Arch Manning era is already underway. So they're wasting no time pumping that out. The 4-letter network did that. All right. Jonathan, can you hang around a little bit more?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm
okay.
Here.
All right.
I'm here.
I want to run something by both of you when we come back. And also we got a lot of people that have weighed in via the comment section. So we'll read some of those. I think we know how they're going to go, but we'll do that. That's what we're here for. This is the Longhorns Squad show. That is the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith, along with the everyday regular outstanding host of the Longhorns podcast, Jonathan Davis. I'm Jeff Biggs. Texas loses tonight at AT&T. They come up short. They lose to Ohio State 28-14. All right. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that is a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert. You can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions, whether you've got one form or 20. TurboTax experts give your taxes the undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress, so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to you won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who is ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, and from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs, no doubt, are better with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website, share betting lines around your team or league. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, welcome back to the Locked On Longhorns Squad show. Jonathan Davis, the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. I'm Jeff Biggs. Texas was tied with Ohio State 14-14 going into the fourth, and the Buckeyes ended up winning by the final of 28-14. And you guys did an outstanding job of hitting on all the different aspects of this game. And I just, watching this team and something you both touched on, Jonathan and Coach, was just, I came in kind of like midway through the season, even though I've always watched the Horns, but I mean, doing it for this, and it just seemed like and Jonathan, you would talk about it during the week, just the criticism of just the inconsistency with the offense. I mean, they would look great for a quarter, and then they would have a big lead in the first half, and then they would come back in the second half, and they would just go flat. I mean, they had the stat tonight that Texas has gone 6 straight games without scoring a touchdown in the third. They broke that tonight. But I don't know. It just I said over and over again, I mean, every single game, I was so impressed by this defense. And we saw glimpses of this offense. We saw big plays at times. We saw great running. We saw the ups and downs with, Blue going into the doghouse with fumbles and all that, and Wisner and the way that, but they complemented each other and they played great, and the O-line and Gunnar Helm with the tight end. I mean, all those things. And you just, the narrative was, okay, as long as they win, as long as they keep winning, and I really thought after the win, the wild win over Arizona State, whenever you win a championship, it's not easy, and you always get some kind of a scare along the way. And I thought that was the big boogaboo, and that, okay, they were going to come into this game finally as an underdog, Jonathan, because as you know, they've had the burden of being the number one team or the team that was expected to win it this year all season long. And now they finally got to go into a game where they weren't the favorite. They were the underdog, and they had a chance to play with that chip on their shoulder. And the way that it started, I mean, to your point, I mean, thankfully the defense finally brought them back in it, and they were able to make a game, and they had a chance to win. But when you squeeze it all out and you break it all down and you look at the job the defense, it just, all the arrows just keep coming back to, it was up to the offense to score just a little more points. And I don't know, maybe we'll see, things will be different with Arch next year. I thought Sark, and I'll shut up here, but I thought Sark kind of in the third, when he kept going to those screen passes and they kept working. I mean, it felt like he was finally taking what they were giving him and not trying to force plays that weren't working. And then that kind of opened up the running game a little bit more, but they just could not. Then everything just changed with that goal line stand. And that was it.
Yeah.
That was the game.
I think what we saw kind of all season, what we've kind of seen, I think, from Sark really over the years, and it could be Sark, it could be Quinn Ewers, right? And I guess we'll see when we go to Arch Manning. And I do think that the offense will be better because we've all talked about Arch's legs and his ability to use that. And I think that's just so pivotal in college football, because that's something extra that you have to defend. I mean, we talk about the biggest plays in this game, and Will Howard, I mean, he should have took it to the house, but him converting that fourth down is one of the biggest reasons that Ohio State won the game. They could trust him to go to his legs. What we've seen from this Texas offense all year, really, and I think why it shows that they've had such an inability to score in the second half, is because they talked about it, Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit, how Sark is renowned for his opening script. And you see Texas come out just like they did against Arizona State, right? They come out, boom, 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 and score like 7 points in like the first 3 plays. And even though they weren't able to score like that in this game, we've usually seen a ton of success in the first and second quarter because they're working off a Sark script. And then in the second half, when they're not working off the script, that's when we've seen them start to struggle. And so I think that's been a thing with the offense. But yeah, I felt like what was really working in the second half was they started to go to the tempo. Right, they started to go to the up tempo, the no huddle, not really necessarily no huddle, but just getting right back on the ball, and not necessarily allowing Ohio State guys to substitute and just keep running play after play after play after play and putting pressure on them. And I thought that's what was working in the second half. I think that's what we kind of saw in the Georgia games when they were able to make plays as well as going up tempo. But yeah, it just wasn't enough. At the end of the day, it's a production business, and I talked about it. The 3 biggest games of the year, Sark's offense couldn't crack 20 points. So, I do think it'll be different with Arch Manning, because another thing that we saw too, not just Arch Manning's ability to use his legs, but Arch Manning pushes the ball down the field a lot more than Quinn Ewers does, right? And this is not a knock on Quinn Ewers at all. This is not me saying that, the offense is going to be way better with Arch Manning. We don't know that yet, right? But I do think that, kind of what we saw from Sark at Alabama was the consistent deep ball, right? The consistent ability to push the ball down the field, where Quinn Ewers is more of a short to intermediate guy. And I thought that Ohio State did a good job of kind of, shutting that down, right? I do think with Arch Manning, you're going to see a lot more of the ball being pushed down the field. And I think we're going to see Sark's offense open up a little bit more.
I'm going to say this, and I not disagreeing with anything you're saying. At the end of the day, you got to be able to run the football if you're going to win big football games. You got to be able to run the ball. I don't give a damn if it's the quarterback running it. I don't care if you're running hand sweep, jet sweep. I don't care. You got to be able to run the football. And you talk about what Sark did at Alabama. He did it with Mac Jones, and he did it because he was able to run the football right, and then that brings the safeties down, and that gives you an opportunity to hit home runs. And so they being defensively, I don't care if you're playing Ohio State or Bemidji State. If you can't get the safeties to come down and stop the run, because that's where your numbers come from. Don't make any mistake about it. Football is a numbers game. How many hats can you get on a hat? And when you make their safety come down into the box, create a 7 or 8 man box, depending on what your offensive personnel is, then that gives you the opportunity to push the ball down the field. But you must be able to run the football. And I don't care if we're talking about the NFL, if we're talking about the SEC, or we're talking about anything. I love Mike Leach to death. Mike Leach was great for college football, very innovative, right? 8-3, 7-4. He might go 9-2, but at the end of the day, he wasn't able to impose his will because he wasn't good enough and they weren't good enough running the football. Notre Dame had 2 offensive tackles that were playing last night. I promise you, Jeff couldn't block me and you. But they were able to run the football in tough situations. And you can say, well, I don't like running quarterback power. I don't like running quarterback counter. I don't like running quarterback draw. And that's fine. I don't care for it either. But at the end of the day, you have that particular weapon to be able to run the football. And so I just think running the football opens up every other avenue for you to be able to go and do what you need to do, which is, like you're saying, hit home runs. You can't score enough runs. Let's take it from a baseball mentality. If you're hitting single, double, single, eventually you can get 2 or 3 outs and you're out of the inning. Where if you get that single, bang, then you get that home run, there's a reason why they pay Judge all that money. There's a reason why baseball, you got to be able to hit some home runs. But Texas proved it to you today. They didn't defensively. They didn't really respect Ohio State running the football. They played their safeties deep, and guess what? Their receivers, very, very minimal. That's not who beat you in the football game. What beat you in the football game was a bad turnover, and then they called the right play at the right time to end the first half running that screen. And good for Chip Kelly. The last I checked, he'd been a head coach in the NFL a couple of places. hey, you know what? Sometimes you eat the bear, sometimes the bear eats you. And I'm sure he got the right call to what, Pete Kwiatkowski had called, which was backing everybody up so they didn't get beat over the top. And then, like I said, they get the screen in there. You get the big 18-wheelers going, and you get Henderson, who's a Ferrari, and he zips it up through there and scores. Well, good for him. Right call, right place. That's not what lost you the football game. What lost you the football game was your inability to impose your will and run the football down there on the goal line.
Yeah, there it is. All right. I promised I would get in some of the comments, and we got a lot of them, as you would imagine. This is from Ernest. Ohio, Texas, good, but they never played a team like this Buckeyes team. You see how they double team Jay Smith. They know what kind of havoc he can do. Doe says, I'm looking forward to the Arch era, and he will carry much better. So hook 'em horns. Let's see. Ohio State penalties made game look closer. Texas didn't shut it down. OSU made a lot of mistakes. Though this is I think a Buckeye fan. While you cry about holds, you overlook the many holds that Texas had. Let's see. 2025, you need some kind of mobility as a quarterback. Just saying, that's what you were just talking about, Coach. And I'm just trying to pick some that are different here. Should have put Arch in for that 1st and goal. Feel bad for our defense. They played hard the past 2 games. Sark lost this game. Ewers and Sark, the reason we lost the game. So that's kind of the gist of it. Go Longhorns, and yeah, that's the gist of it.
Yeah. I think kind of going back to what you were saying, Coach, I think it was because I always thought that this Texas team was better at their best when they ran the ball, right? I don't have to look at the numbers. I would assume that Quinn Ewers threw the ball over 40 times. That's not typically how this Texas football team is going to win, right? And so you see like games against Kentucky where they run for over 200 yards, games against Clemson where they rush for over 200 yards. And then you see a game against Arizona State where you don't crack 100, right? I'm pretty sure they didn't crack 100 yards in this game. And so it's like it was the inconsistency of the run. Really, I mean, you just talked about it, Jeff, the inconsistency of the offense all year. But it's like one game, this is the best offensive line in the country. They're just mowing people down, and Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue are getting whatever they want. And then we see against Georgia, they can't run the ball at all, right? I mean, UMass, I've talked about this on the show. UMass ran the ball for 200 yards against Georgia. But Texas in 2 games, I don't think cracked 100 yards total against Georgia. So, I mean, just the inconsistency of this run game all year, I just really don't get it, right? Because like you said, that is the foundation of Sark's offense. We could talk about the wide receivers. We could talk about the deep shots and all of that. When he had Mac Jones, he also had Najee Harris, right? And, the foundation of this offense is the running game and, the inability to get that going consistently tonight. And I think that put a lot of pressure on Quinn Ewers. And ultimately, I just don't think that was the best formula to win.
And I mean, don't let me sell you on the fact that I think you got to run the quarterback 12 or 15 times a game, because I'm not from that school either. Because guess what? You don't have more than one of those guys. So if you plan on hitting him up in there a bunch of times, guess what? It's only a matter of time before you're going to get that guy hurt. I just think that I think Quinn Ewers is a really good quarterback, but I think that he has to have the threat of the run game and the threat of the play action to be able to draw those safeties in, and then to be able to – he's a really good intermediate thrower. That's why I was surprised when he missed that out route. We didn't talk about the big drop by Bond. I mean, that was a big drop in the second quarter where he jumped and he didn't have to. He dropped the football. It would have kept that first down going. So I do think Ewers – is a good intermediate thrower. I think he's a smart guy. I think he understands how to get in and out of some good plays and get you out of some bad plays. And I'm just from the school that he running the football is not about saying, hey, we got to go get 200 yards. It's about staying consistent running the football. And I think Texas's defense keeps you in games where you don't have to – it doesn't have to be a situation like Oregon got into against Ohio State where they had to throw it every single down because, they were behind 28-0 before you could, turn around and see what was going on in the football game. It was never that way tonight. And so defensively – that they're good enough and have been good enough all year to win for you. And you know what? At the end of the day, you're going to look back, and if you're honest with yourself, you look back at the cut-ups, and that's what you do. That's how you get better in the spring. You go look at all these cut-ups, and you say, hey, what did we do that didn't allow us to have a chance to win this game or win that game? And I think it's going to go right back to the run game. I mean, you have to be able to get themselves in that situation where they were down there on that last drive. They converted two. Correct me if I'm wrong. A 3rd and 3 and a 3rd and 4. They converted them running the football, and so those were big conversions that kept that last drive going.
Yeah.
So anyway, we can just keep singing this same song, but
All right.
You got to be able to get it done there.
All right, well, let's do this. Let's take our final timeout, and when we come back, we'll have final thoughts. Jonathan, I want to talk a little bit more about what we can look for next season, maybe who's coming back, who might be leaving, how both sides of the ball look as we look ahead to next year. Not just Arch, but the entire team, the running game, the O-line, everything. We'll do that, and we'll get some final thoughts from the coach as well. But the season is over tonight. Texas falls to Ohio State 28-14. This is the Locked On Longhorns Squad Show. All right. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff has been incredible and has been an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. And hopefully next season we'll see Texas take that next step and make it to the championship game. But Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You can use Game Time Picks to find tickets for an upcoming game. It's a breeze. You can get great value for all kinds of seats at the venue. The Super Deal, in particular, stood out as the best value for the event. You could see the seat views before you buy, and the app shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, our final segment of the Locked On Longhorns Squad Show. The coach, Glenn Stretch Smith, and Jonathan Davis, the outstanding host of the Locked On Longhorns podcast. Every day he'll be with you throughout the offseason, spring ball, everything, getting you ready, everything you need to know, any news, any developing stories. JD will be all over that. So just right now, just off the top of your head, I know we're not breaking down every position, but most of the guys coming back, or a good enough group on both sides of the ball coming back for next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be excited about. I think, when I first look at it, obviously we've talked about Arch Manning, him being the quarterback next year, and then Cedric Baxter, who was supposed to be your starting running back this season, who had the knee injury. He should be back, right, with Trey Wisner. So you still expect a really good running game. We saw DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo making plays. Don't know what's going to happen with Matthew Golden, but you do have DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo coming back. But you are going to be replacing this entire offensive line. Right. And so anytime a team is replacing their entire offensive line, that's a question mark. We're going to have to see what happens with that. Tight end, what that's going to look like. Gunnar Helms obviously going to be moving on to the NFL. And then I thought you saw some key players on defense all season, and especially tonight. Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, Malik Muhammad, that'll be coming back next year. That should headline this defense. You are going to be losing, Jade Barron, Michael Taft, Andrew Makuba, players like that. But still a lot of talent on this Texas football team. And what's very interesting is their next game is against Ohio State, right? So
that's right.
Right. Their very next game is against Ohio State. So you get to see them. But yes, Texas team is bringing a lot of talent back. Certainly a playoff contender next year. Certainly a national championship contender next year. A very good football team. And we should be right back in this position next year. Hopefully we could be one of the last 4 teams standing. We certainly have the talent to do so.
Coach, what do you think? What from a coaching standpoint, you talked in the end of last segment about going back and looking at the clips and trying to learn and build off and take away from what you did wrong. But how much motivation, how much needs to be said, during the off season, and what other buttons can you push to kind of get the mindset of, hey, we have unfinished business. We've had a couple of great seasons, but we're still not, we didn't do what we wanted to do.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's hard to get into this position where you're in the semifinal, and they've done it 2 years in a row. So you have to give them credit for getting themselves there. Now the question becomes, what do you do to push yourself into, the championship game? What do we need to do? What does it start with? And obviously it's going to start with the strength and conditioning program, those guys getting in the weight room. It's going to start with, like you were saying, they're going to have to probably go pluck 2 or 3 guys out of the portal, offensive linemen that you think can come in and immediately help you. I just think it's hard to get yourself to this position right here. It really is. It's difficult to do. And when you're not able to cash in on that, I think it's very disappointing. You think about the 49ers in the NFL and how they've gotten themselves in position, but now all of a sudden, father time creeps up. And we're not talking, I get it, we're talking about college football where new guys come in. But at the end of the day, it's hard to get yourself in position to continue to win year after year after year. And that's what makes Coach Saban so great. Winning those championships that he won. It's what makes Bill Belichick great. And so obviously I think as a staff, Texas will, come together and say, what are we going to do to get ourselves in a position to win a national championship here? Because it's been a while since Vince Young did it against USC. And I think that's what Texas fans want. That's what they're starved for. And we know all you got to do is win one of them. They'll name a damn steakhouse after you and everything else in Austin. So you can really get it going.
All right. Well, that was, I still call that the greatest college football game I've ever seen, that Texas win over USC. That's just me, though. All right. Before we go, Jonathan, last word from you. I want to let you just, for those that are watching or that are going to be listening later, what's kind of on the agenda here for you now that the season's over? Kind of walk us through what your show is going to be like and what we can look forward to.
Yeah, definitely tomorrow, tune in. We'll have a recording, a reaction to the game, full reaction. Continue to just talk about the game. Obviously basketball is going on. Baseball is coming up, but it's going to be a lot of football. Like you said, we cover it from every angle. Texas is going to hit the portal now full time and try to get some players that can come in and help, just like Andrew Makuba was able to for this year. So we're going to follow recruiting. We're going to follow the portal. Then that's going to lead into spring football, the spring game, the summer workouts, the fall camp, and then we'll be right back here in the season. So, a lot of football from every angle, basketball and baseball. But, the meat of the show will continue to be this Texas football team all year. All
right. Well, truly, it was great having you on tonight. Thanks for hanging out with us. I wish it was after a win. It would have been a little more fun. But great job. Great to have your insight. We appreciate you.
Sir, Hogan.
And Coach, loved working with you. Hopefully, we'll get to do it again next season. But loved your insight, loved your passion, and it's like you said, it's tough. It's all about the season, right? You gotta take the season when you have it, and it's tough when you don't get to finish the way you want.
Feels a lot like it did with the Cowboys, right? Some days you get to drink the wine, and other days you get to stomp the grapes. And right now we got some purple feet. We're stomping some grapes, so hopefully get a chance to get back on here, Jeff. Hey, appreciate you having me this year, and good luck, man.
Okay, thank you, buddy. That's the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith, Jonathan Davis. My name is Jeff Biggs, and again, our final score tonight, the Longhorns fall short to Ohio State, 28-14. Want to thank everybody, Chris Gordy for coming on, the great Zach Blackerby for setting all of this up, and most of all, we want to thank you, the fans and the listeners that are not only hanging with us live tonight, but those that are listening at a later time. We're here for you. That's why we did these shows, because we wanted to be here live for you to talk about it, but also to get your reaction. So we appreciate you jumping on. And again, we'll just continue to stay locked on, as we will. Happy New Year. And hopefully next year we'll be talking a different story, but spring ball and the next season will be here before we know it. Coach, have a great night. And again, the final score, Ohio State 28, Texas 14. This has been the Locked On Longhorns Squad Show.